Okay. So like I was saying when we started, this was last February. Rachel, John, and Judy and I. Oh, and maybe the thing I didn't say is we went the day before and we scouted it out because I really wanted to shoot toward the north. And I actually kicked a hole down in the bottom right here with my boot during the day, so it was easier to find the spot at night. Like I kicked a hole in the snowbank. Anyway, um, it's always good to take two cameras and then you can shoot the craziness. Yeah, so what this presentation was not, like I said, is a star tracker to photograph or a nebula or, oh God, what did I do? I guess it's not going to go so well. And what you need to do this kind of photography that I do anyway is a modern digital camera and a fast wide angle lens. And maybe I didn't say this before, but I really prefer f2.8 or faster. So f2.8, f1.8, f1. But once you get above 3.5, it's really it's hard. You have to go to a pretty high ISO, and the exposures are pretty dark. You can get some back in Photoshop, but it's good to have a fast lens. And then we're going to talk about the types of night shots, static stars, star trails, the aurora forecast, and the various challenges of doing a night photography, focusing, composing, depth of field, light painting, how not to make everybody mad at you. And this is the different kinds. Oh, and this is the other side of the not so famous Molten Barn, and it's also lit up by a car, believe it or not. So it's amazing out there. Like cars can actually be your friend, or star trails like this one. So we're going to talk about both of those. And now that you guys have seen how we set up the tripod, which for the rest of you I'll talk about later, this is a horizon. So here's the Tetons. This is the fall into winter Milky Way. It goes right over your head. I almost fall over every time I try to look at all of it. And I shot this maybe 5 exposures or 6 exposures, and I stitched them together in Photoshop, Photo Merge, which works really well. It's amazing, actually. And this is how I f2.8 14 millimeter lens, ISO 3200 28-second exposures. And this is like 4 exposures shot horizontally like a panorama that I stitched together in the spring. Well, it's June. I think it was June, lit up by the moon. That's probably the first few slides, right?
Yeah.
For as longer than 30 seconds, the stars are going to move. So in all things, you want your static star exposures to be under 30 seconds. And I'll talk some more about some generic settings to use for that. But there's all kinds of 400 rule and the 500 rule and the divide this by that and you get this. But some of them give you a time that's more than 30 seconds. And if you're more than 30 seconds, you're not going to be happy. This is another chart. And if anybody wants these charts, I can send them to you. But like I said, my rule of thumb is 30 seconds. If you're longer than that, you're not going to be happy. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, I think that the hardest thing when you do night photography is focus, hands down. It's really difficult. The little focus thing on the dial of your camera lens doesn't mean infinity. So you have to find out, and I'll talk some more about hyperfocal distance in a minute, but you can't see through the camera because it's dark. I did hear last time when I gave this talk from Lauren that with some of the new mirrorless cameras, you can actually see through the camera, but for the most part, you're literally pointing your camera and shooting. You're not looking through it. You can't focus. So it's a challenge, and I like it because everything is a happy accident. It's kind of, you can't overthink it. So like I said, hyperfocal distance is really important. So for any lens that you're going to shoot at night, you want to know what the hyperfocal distance is. So on my 16 millimeter f2.8 at night, infinity, if I focus at 10 feet, then my whole image from 5 feet to infinity is in focus. And so unlike during the day where you're going to change your aperture to get more depth of field, at night, you're going to focus at whatever your hyperfocal distance is. And I'll show you, there's some charts. And then you're never going to change your focus. So what I usually do during the day is I take my students out, we get their lenses in focus, we use a tape measure and another person to get the hyperfocal distance. We turn off autofocus, we put some gaffer's tape on it, and we never change it because you want to shoot wide open and you want to have infinity focus. So these are some examples. For the eclipse, I was using some really wicked long lens, and the hyperfocal, the hyperfocal distance is like a mile away, and it was really hard to get it in focus. But anyway, so this never changes though. So I just have my lens taped because I don't use my 14 millimeter for anything else. So I just keep it focused. And there's a link in here for a chart, and I'll show you, I think the next slide. Yeah, so you plug in, what kind of camera you have, and then you plug in your focal length of your lens and your f-stop, and it'll tell you what your hyperfocal distance is. So, like I said a couple of minutes ago, unlike during the day, you're not going to change your aperture to get the depth of field that you want. So if you have an object that's close to you that you want in your frame, it has to be, for me, it has to be at 5 feet or it's going to be out of focus. So you have to move your body to get the object so that the whole scene is in focus. I hope that makes sense. And luckily with a really wide angle lens, everything, something 5 feet away is pretty close. So almost everything is going to be in focus. Yeah, so like I said, we get it all set up during the day, and that just makes it easier. Also, the other thing that's really handy is Rokinon makes these manual focus wide angle lenses that are really great. They have them for the Sony and the Micro Four Thirds and the Canon and the Nikon and everything now, and they're really inexpensive. And then it's calibrated, you just turn it to infinity and you have infinity focus, which is really cool. Let's see. So there are other ways to find focus if you didn't plan ahead and during the day. You can zoom in live view, not with your zoom on your lens, but in live view, and you can focus on a star. You can focus, like light up a nearby object and focus on that manually using live view, which I just am not really good at any of these things. So I usually do it ahead of time. But it is, like I said, the hardest thing to do. The other thing, and I'll show you this flashlight in a later slide, I have a 1100 lumens flashlight, and the other thing you can do is I often taped it to my tripod, walked out to my hyperfocal distance, and your camera will actually autofocus on the light, which is pretty handy if you haven't planned ahead. I don't know why it autofocuses on the light, but I learned it from this other photographer that I was out with one night, which is kind of handy. So like I said, my way, I just do it during the day. We turn on autofocus, we put something at the hyperfocal distance, we focus on it, we tape our lens, and then we're done. And if you don't tape your lens, if you bump it in the middle of the night when you're walking around, and then everything after that is out of focus, that's not going to be a good thing either. So I recommend, all my tripods have gaffer's tape around one of the sections so that I always have a piece to use. So that's my take on focusing. And then now I wanted to talk a little bit about composing images. So I have some friends, what they do is they set their ISO to something really high so that they can take just a couple second exposure, see what it looks like, move it around, do a few more, and then they set it back to whatever ISO they're going to use. I usually use, for f2.8, I usually use 3200. My new lens is an f1.8, so I use something a little bit less, like 1600, but usually it's somewhere between 3200 and 6400 unless you have a really slow lens. And then when you're changing it back and forth, of course, it's dark, so you're fraught with peril of having an error of getting the settings wrong. So what I do is I just shoot and then move it a little and then shoot and then move it a little. And that way, sometimes I don't even know through the little viewfinder if I like the image or I don't like the image. And it turns out some of the ones I do to line up actually are the one I want to keep. So it's 30 seconds or so you're not going to get back, but you get a lot, you get more shots that way, and you just keep moving, because you can't look through your viewfinder, you just keep moving it around. So that, yeah, let's see, that's what I do, aim my camera and shoot. Um, yeah, yeah. And if you have to keep turning your light on to change your ISO, people are going to get mad at you as well. So it's always good to just leave the settings how they are. I wonder what happened to okay, well, that's later. So the lights I use, like I said, here in the, is my little 1100 lumens light that I can use to focus. This dual beam light I stole from a friend of mine, and it's from some astro site online. It's great. It's got a dimmer, and the LED lights are really blue. So if you're going to light paint with an LED light, you really want to put a photographic gel over it to make it amber, because that blue light is really unpleasant. And then tea lights, I'm going to talk a little bit about tea lights. I love tea lights. They're amber colored. They're really good for little, like putting in something to light it up from, so you're outside of it, but the inside is lit up. They're really handy for little close-up things because they're not very bright. A little bit of light goes a long way when you're light painting. Let's see. And you can get them a lot of places. They have a little switch on the bottom. I don't know if you can see me, but does that even, oh, I picked a dead one. Oh, well, sorry. So depth of field and a light painting example. So this window is way closer than 5 feet to me, but in a perfect world, I'd be able to move back to make it perfectly in focus, but it still holds up pretty well. So I'm probably 4 feet from it, and I used a tea light just for an instant to light it up. It took almost no light at all to light it up. So, but again, you'd move your body to get the foreground object in focus if you can, if you don't fall off the cliff or into the water or anything like that. Let's see. So the next thing I want to talk about a little bit, you can always change this in the raw converter, and you should always shoot raw. I have a summary of these things coming up, but the difference between, I really like tungsten. I'm a huge tungsten fan because I like that blue. To me, that's what the night sky looks like. But you can do pretty much anything in between. If you shoot in raw, you can change it to anything. And this little cabin had 2 tea lights in it. That's what lit up the inside of that cabin. 2 of these little teeny tiny tea lights. That's all it took to light that up from the inside. Yeah. Oh, I was just thinking that I hadn't talked about this. We're not going to litigate this, but artificial light is against Grand Teton National Park regulations. So if you are light painting, the most popular place that people light paint is the Molten Barns, with big, huge strobes and really bright lights. And you will get cited if they're in a mood to cite you. Yeah. But I like to talk about it because there's places where it's allowed. Sometimes we accidentally turn our headlamps on and light things up. It happens. You can use your light to get from A to B as well. And the moon, like that original shot, that was just a little crescent moon, and it lit up the whole side of the barn really pretty perfectly. And cars, I used to dread cars. I used to think, oh, there's a car coming, I can't shoot now. And now we shoot when we hear a car, because sometimes it makes the perfect side of something lit up. Yeah, like I said, LED lights are super blue. So like my little light has a photographic gel over it, and you can buy that and just cut it up. Does somebody have a question?
That's only half of it.
Really? Wait a minute. Let me,
Okay. Did somebody have a question? Or is somebody just talking? Let's see. Yeah, the closer the object, the foreground object is, the less light it needs to light it up. So a little bit does really go a long way. This is the not popular side of the Reed Molten Barn, and this was entirely lit up by a car on the the Antelope Flats Road, believe it or not. And I didn't have to do anything except shoot. And I think that's an airplane over there, which is kind of cool. So cars can be your friend. And I think I showed this before, but this had 2 tea lights in it. This was this was taken before I didn't know we couldn't light paint. So there's a teeny little bit on the outside. This is my dual beam light that I showed you in that photo, and I just walked into the shot and spun it around, which was kind of fun. Let's see. So when I was in Big Bend one time, there was a light down at the bottom of the hill and everything kept setting it off. And then we found ourselves running down the hill to set it off to light up the side of this church. And there's the 3 of us. The 3 of us, our little self-portrait caused by the light that we didn't like in the beginning. Let's see. Sometimes no light is good. This is really great without any light at all, I think. And then reflections are really cool. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, I can see it really well on my screen. So that's always an option. And this is the comet with the reflection. So a lot of people talk about the galactic core. When can you see the galactic core? The Milky Way is crap without the galactic core. And this, so here in the valley, the best, milkiest Milky Way is going to be in the spring and summer, early summer. But for us, the best Milky Way is in the fall and in the winter because it comes right out of the Tetons. So you may not get that super duper duper Milky Way, but it comes right out of the Tetons. So I actually prefer like September, October, November, December, January are my favorite months to shoot here for the Milky Way because you get all these really great angles like Snake River Overlook with it coming right out of the Tetons. So a couple of things about when you're out there, especially if you go to the barns or someplace that's really popular, a little bit of light goes a long way, and you can really screw up somebody else's composition. And I know that people like to use a red headlamp because it doesn't hurt your night vision, but you can't see well enough with it to move around without hurting yourself. And it's really hard to edit out of your image if you're not the person with the red light. So I tend to not use a red light. And the red light on the back of your camera also can be in somebody else's shot. This is my friend Jan, who's actually here somewhere on this Zoom, and I light painted her and made the Milky Way come out of her head. And she was laughing, and it's a little blurry, but let's see what's next. Yeah, so we were doing a shoot at this pond in my neighborhood, and these are the little lights. We're probably 15 feet away from our cameras, and these are the little lights on the back of our cameras from 15 feet away. So you can really see them from pretty far away. And I always love to take these. So this is one of my classes setting up to shoot. So imagine if you're walking into the middle of a group of people who are already out and you have all this, I don't know why Terry has a green headlamp, but this is all the light we made just approaching the subject and trying to get set up. Let's see. Around here, there's a lot of things you can fall into and hurt yourself, and I won't belabor that, but there's a badger hole at the TA Molten Barn, and I could easily at night break my leg there. So just we always try to keep an eye out for those things. So I have a few tips from some of the stuff that we've done off and on in the field. So if you're shooting a 30-second exposure and somebody walks through it, you're never going to see them. But if they stop for a little bit of time, they're see-through. If they stop for a long enough period of time, they're solid. And so we started playing these little games where we would walk in and see how ghost-like we could be, which is pretty fun to play around with. And you can also, this is actually a person who wrote this with a tea light, but you can't see them, which is kind of fun. As long as you keep moving, you don't show up. So we started like writing things. Some of them were not fit for public consumption. The other really, really awesome thing, if your camera doesn't have it, like get a camera that does, because this virtual horizon thing on the back in the dark is like the best thing ever. It's just literally the best thing ever. You never have another crooked shot. You just turn it on and level your camera. It's so great. Um, I use this notch in my ball head so that I can tip my camera way back and get further up in the sky. Instead of turning the camera sideways, I turn my camera back into it, which is really handy. Little tips of the trade from night shoots gone by. And then if you want to do the horizon to horizon Milky Way I showed in the beginning, this is a really good reason to have an L bracket. So you put your if you have a ball head, you put your thing in the thing to flip it sideways, and then you can actually rotate your camera all the way around horizon to horizon, doing a shot and just rotating shot, 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 and then you stitch them together with photo merge in Photoshop. So let's see here. Some things to see if your camera has. So the Canons have these programmable buttons C1 through C3. So I actually have them configured for my night settings. So if you wanted to go from ISO 100,000 back to your normal ISO, you could configure C1 and C2. So you just turn the dial and it changes all your settings. It's really handy in the dark. You just set everything up and then you just save them. And then you can just turn the dial. It's the best thing ever. Or you can do it with a custom menu and then have them all set up so that you can just pick that menu if you don't have I don't know if Nikon has those setting dial thingies, but they're really great. You also want to turn your display brightness to low because your display can affect your night vision and really annoy everyone around you. And we usually put tape over the little red light that shows up from really far away because that's pretty handy. So let's review the night photography settings for static stars. So you always want to shoot wide open. So that's the lowest number, because the littler the number, the wider the aperture. So my fastest lens is f1.8. So I always shoot at f1.8. Usually your ISO, your virtual film speed will be between 3200 and 6400. But if you have a faster lens, you could go less. You just have to kind of play around. Some cameras have I think are more sensitive than others. Always want to shoot RAW. You can do so much with RAW that you can't do if you just shoot JPEG. You can change the white balance. You can do all kinds of different things if you're shooting in RAW. I don't use long exposure noise reduction or high ISO noise reduction because they just waste time. And you can post process with like the Nick tools or something to remove if you have too much noise. They don't really do anything, and it makes the exposure twice as long. It's good to know where bulb is, and when we talk about star trails next, if you use an intervalometer, you'll want to know where bulb is. I don't use the remote shutter release because these are 30-second exposures, and the little, you know, as long as you're not jostling your camera, I don't think it really matters. And I always turn off automatic image preview. Like if I want to see the image I just shot, I push a button, because having that flashing up all the time is really disturbing to people who are shooting around you. So that's sort of my overview of the static star stuff. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but you're welcome to ask them. And while you're thinking about it for a second, I got approached just the other day from the Wyoming stargazing folks, and they're doing this really cool thing on August 11th, where they're asking every business in Jackson to turn their lights out for an hour. And I'm going to be up on Signal Mountain, and I'm going to probably go up there a day or two before and shoot town before they turn the lights out and shoot town after. So I'll let you guys know, but you're welcome to join me if you want, or they're looking for volunteers to shoot other places in the valley. For those of you who don't know, this is what Jackson looks like from the north at night. It's super bright. We're brighter than Flagstaff, Arizona, which has like almost an order of magnitude more people than we do. So it's a really good project. They're trying to bring awareness to keeping our skies dark here. So with that, I'll see if you guys have any questions before I go on to the Star Trail stuff. I know you're not shy.
David, are we going to get a recording of this so that, because I didn't save any of the information on all these charts, it would be really good if we can get it through the TPC website.
Yeah, I hit the record button. Unfortunately, I missed a few slides at the start due to the number of people who were sending me messages. So I'll apologize for that. But yeah, we'll have most of it. I do have a question. What is gaffer's tape and where do you get it?
Gaffer's tape is used by the people that do like sets and stuff for plays and like audio visual stuff. You can buy it online. The good thing about gaffer's tape is, unlike duct tape and some other tapes, it's not gummy. So it won't leave like goo on your lens or goo on anything. It's really, it's made to be like stick to carpet and come up. It's really great stuff, and it tears really easy, so it's easy to get a little piece to cover up things.
Okay, and we got another message, a question that where is the Milky Way now?
This time of the year, it's almost ready to roll off. So what happens is in the spring and summer, it's in the eastern sky and it's pretty low to the horizon, and then my friend Judy and I went out every month of the year during the dark week for 2 years. So we watched it. Well, we watched us move. I've been informed that it's us who move, not the Milky Way. But anyway, so this time of the year, last month, like I showed you, let me pull up that first slide. So can you still see my slides?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where it was in February last year. So we were pretty far south. We were on the Moose Wilson Road, just near Moose, and we were shooting toward the north. And it's just coming almost right out of the Grand Teton. So this is the time of the year that it's right over the Tetons. But in March, starting probably, I haven't looked. If you want to look, stellarium is pretty handy. It starts to roll off, and then it'll be only up at like 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, and it'll start being in the eastern sky again. But February, it's north. This is where it was last February, so it's pretty far north, and it's right over the Tetons.
Just kind of elaborate on that. There's several programs, one called Photo Pills and one, Kathy may be talking about this in a minute.
Stellarium.
Solarium, and then the photographers of Ephemeris that will help you locate where the Milky Way and a lot of other things in the sky are at any time of the year. So
yeah, so I'm not one of those I use a lot of apps people. So we literally just sort of went out and looked up every month to see where it was. Even I use Stellarium a little bit, but there are even these apps you can put on your phone and hold it up to the sky and it'll tell you what's right over you, which I've never used because it's not how I roll. But there's a lot of, I use Stellarium on my computer, and like David said, PhotoPills is good too. So you can look, or you can even look in real time when you're out there.
Oops. This is what one of the apps looks like. So maybe that's not working so well. I'll see if I can pull it up on the PC here in a minute.
Is that photo pills?
That was the photographer's ephemeris.
Yeah, we just one time we went in the spring, it was like May, to a place we thought the Milky Way was going to be, and it wasn't, and it was still a good place to shoot. We just shot in the other direction. So we kind of stumbled on it. Now we know when, but anyway, there are a bunch of different apps, and I'm sure everybody has their favorite. Who goes out, you'll find yours.
Do you use
CJ, Becky.
Yeah, Becky has a
CJ,
question.
Becky has a question.
Yeah, she wanted to know what time of the night was that shot that you were showing.
Oh, the one from last year. The other great thing about the winter is that it's not very late. Like this was at what was it, Rachel? Like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock? It wasn't very late.
9. It wasn't like 1 or 2 in the morning. It was before midnight for sure.
Way before midnight. Like in the
Yeah.
winter, the Milky Way's up as soon as it's dark. Now in like April, it's like 3 in the morning before the Milky Way is up. And it's really annoying. And it starts getting earlier and earlier. So by like July, it's like 11 o'clock. And then by the fall, it's like 9. So that's what I use Stellarium for the most, is just to see what time it's going to be up. But yeah, this in the winter, it's really early. And I think we lasted all of what, an hour or hour and a half, because it was so cold.
It was very cold. Yeah.
And we would sit in the car. Like I have it in the Star Trail. I shot Star Trails that night. I have it in my next presentation. And so my camera just shot without me while we warmed up in the car.
Yeah. That's what hand warmers and foot warmers are for, by the way. That kind of situation.
I have these big shearling gloves that come up to my elbows, and they have straps on them, and I put hand warmers in them, and then I have glove liners to work my camera, and then I cram my hands back in my big, huge gloves. It's wonderful because it's so cold. Yeah. Is there anything else? I'm sorry?
There are ladders in your shot.
Yeah, because the snow was so high, I couldn't get up to look at my camera. So when we scoped it out during the day, I was like, we better bring ladders so we can be tall enough to set up our cameras. So we brought ladders because it was like, that's me. I'm what, 5'5", and it was to my shoulders.
CJ, Rick had a question about, do you use the 2-second delay to trigger your shutter?
No, I don't. A lot of people do, but I don't. I just push the shutter, or I use if I'm shooting Star Trails, then I'll have my intervalometer has a button on it. So I'll use that sometimes, but mostly I just push the shutter. Because, if you're shooting like a 30th or a 15th of a second, the movement really matters. But for these longer exposures, it's sort of a wash, I think. But I don't know. It's certainly easier to work a remote shutter with gloves on, though. So if it's cold, it's pretty handy.
And Barney just wanted everybody to know that right now the Milky Way is coming up in the northwest sky at 8 p.m.
Yeah. And there is no galactic core this time of the year, you know, like if you're a galactic core person, but it's going to come right out of the Tetons. So, but it's pretty far north. Yeah. Anything else?
I don't see any other questions right now.
Okay, well, let me talk. I'm
What do
sorry?
you do about your, I'm sorry, you're telling us how to keep your body warm. What do you do about your camera batteries?
Nothing. I've never had a problem.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Thank you.
I mean, I used to have a problem with like my early Canon 60D or whatever it was, or D60 or whatever. But boy, I haven't had it. You have to buy good batteries though. Like I only buy Canon batteries because some of the cheapy replacement ones, they suck in the cold. But I just literally, I've never had a problem. So
I would
knock on.
suggest you don't walk around to the front and breathe on your lens, though.
Oh yeah, I mean you can get frost, sometimes frosty, but yeah, I haven't had a problem with the batteries, and mostly not really a problem with like condensation either. But some people, it just depends on where you're shooting.
Yeah, I think in places where there's a lot more humidity, some people use a lens warmer on the front, but I've never had that problem here either.
Yeah,
As long as I don't breathe on my lens.
yeah, I mean you have to, yeah, but you know, yeah, but you're not really looking through it. So, you know, it's not
Yeah.
like my face gets really close to my lens. So I guess if you do some heavy breathing on your lens, it might be a problem.
Well, I made a
Yeah,
mistake of
David,
looking
why are
at
you
it
heavy
once.
breathing on your lens?
I know.
Why
Yeah,
are
I
you
just
heavy
made the
breathing on your
mistake
lens,
once
you
of looking at
weirdo?
I made the mistake once of looking at the front, and while I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, that didn't work. So another question, do you take a single exposure that becomes your final photo?
I do when I'm shooting static stars. I know that there's like the whole you tracker thing and you shoot multiple exposures, and I don't do that. And I also am really, I don't know if you noticed from my images, I think a lot of Milky Way photos are over processed. Like they just pump up the vibrance or whatever it is slider, and then you know I like it to look like how I think it looks when I'm out there. I'm really kind of, but I stack star trails images, and we'll talk about that next. I never shoot just one image when I shoot star trails, and I'll tell you all about that.
All right.
So I didn't think I would really ever start shooting star trails, but boy, especially when it's cold, I really like doing it because then I can sit in the car and let my camera shoot all by itself. Makes me really happy. So this is, you know, your static star view, and this is the same shot, but it's like maybe an hour of star movement. So as the planet rotates, right, it rotates on its axes. So if you want your star trails to look like a circle, you have to shoot so that the North Star is in your shot, because we revolve around the north axis of the planet. So everything swirls around the North Star. So in this image, up here in the right upper corner, just out of view, is the North Star, and everything is spinning around it. So if you shoot to the west or to the south, your star trails are more straight lines than they are curves. So you just have to decide what you want it to look like. So let's see. So what do you need to shoot star trails? You need, well, you can shoot one big long exposure, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but I use intervalometer. Some cameras have built-in intervalometers. I use an external intervalometer because you can make longer intervals. If you use the one in your camera, you can only do 30-second intervals because that's the longest shutter speed that most digital cameras have. And if you use your internal intervalometer in your camera, there's like a 3-second gap between when you shoot and when you can shoot again. And so you get these little teeny gaps in your star trails. Whereas an external intervalometer, you can shoot, wait a second, shoot, wait a second, shoot, wait a second, and you don't get the little gaps. So for an external intervalometer, your camera's on bulb. And then I have a bunch of slides on how to set them and stuff. So we'll talk about that and why and how I approach star trails and why. So if you're using your camera's internal intervalometer, since the shots are only 30 seconds, you still have to use a really high ISO to get the right exposure. So not only do you get these gaps and you have these little 30-second exposures, but you also still have to shoot at the same ISO that you would shoot for a static star shot, which is not optimum. So I like to use the intervalometer and shoot longer, what I call longer short exposures. So unless there's a moon, if it's dark, I shoot ISO 400 on my f2.8 lens for 4-minute exposures, and then I stack them. And the real advantage of this, especially if you shoot with a group or there might be a car or whatever, it's super easy to edit out whatever happens. If you have one shot that doesn't have it, it's really easy to edit it out. And I have an example we can do in Photoshop when I'm done. So, and you only get 1 second in between, so you don't get the big long gaps. The longer the exposure is, I think John, Rachel, when we were out, he was shooting 8-minute exposures at some ISO, which is fine, but it also gives you, a longer time before you have to wait before you're done. And it also gives you more chance that every exposure is going to have something in it. So I really like the 4-minute ISO 400. If there's a moon, I go to ISO 100, and I have some examples of images that I've shot during waves. Let's see. Yeah, like I said, it's pretty easy to mask out, and I have an example to show you guys. So I took an online night photography course because I'm always trying to learn new things. And the guy there was really keen on just one big long exposure, like a 2-hour exposure at some, ISO, a smaller aperture and a really low ISO. And you can do that. That's the old fashioned film way. But like I said, the problem with that is if something gets in your shot, or a car goes by, or somebody walks up with a red light on, it ruins the whole exposure, because odds are it's going to be really hard to edit that out. So I'm not a huge fan of the one big long exposure. Okay, so a couple of examples. So I shot this with my sister-in-law Leanne in Arizona, and it was almost a full moon, and I made the moon right off the top here. This is ISO 100. These are 4-minute exposures. And I think it turned out pretty cool. I think it was probably maybe half an hour. And I'm not shooting toward the north. So see how all the star trails are straight? Because I'm shooting away from the revolution around the North Pole. And then I stacked them together, and I edited out some. I could have edited out this car, but I left it in there because I don't know. So last February with the ladders, this is the shot I took while I was sitting in the car staying warm. I think it turned out pretty cool. I was shooting in daylight white balance, but I kind of tweaked it to a color I liked in the raw converter. So this is somewhere between daylight and tungsten. And I think it's probably about an hour of star movement. I'd have to go back and look. But, and in the winter, the other thing that's really neat is the snow really makes a lot of light. I mean, this light over here to the right is, I think, a car, but the rest of the snow is just lit up by, ambient nighttime light. So it really does make for a pretty shot with the snow, even though you're freezing. This one I'm shooting obviously to the west because there's the Tetons. And the little flare is the moon setting. And I went in, like I'll show you, to the different layers and got rid of the bits of the moon I didn't like. So I just had this one beam from one exposure that I shot. And these were 4-minute ISO 400. for, I don't know, probably, I usually only last an hour or an hour and a half, but you could go longer. If you're doing this with a Canon and you're using an external intervalometer, I can't stress this enough. I've debugged it like crazy. Don't let your battery die, because if your battery dies while you're shooting intervals, you lose all your images. And I have tried and tried and tried to get Canon to explain to me why they don't get written to the card until the end, but I've debugged it, and it is the case that if the battery dies, you know, all those 4-minute intervals are gone. So fun times that was. Okay, so your internal intervalometer, oh, I'm sorry, your external intervalometer, your camera is on bulb, and I have screenshots of this. I'm just going to go over it. So the exposure is going to be 4 minutes. The interval in between is a second. You can, most of the intervalometers, it's either, you can set the number of shots, or 0, 0 just shoots until you turn it off, or dash dash on some of them, but they're all pretty similar. I think you can configure like usually from 1 to 990 or to 99 shots, or you can just say 0, 0 and just do it till I get bored with you and turn you off. And the other thing that, and I'll show you this in the screenshots, in order to get the sequence started, you have to set your, you know, the timer that you set to run in front of the camera to take your own picture, you have to set that for a second. Otherwise, it waits 4 minutes before the sequence starts, and it's really annoying. So here it is on here. So this first one, let's see. The self timer is 1 second. That's the thing I said you have to start to get the sequence started. Then here you have, it's a 4-minute interval. It's got an interval in between of 1 second, and then 0, 0 is just shoot until you're done shooting. And this is what most of them look like, more or less. And I always use a cabled one. I can't stand the non-cabled ones. You know, you have to get the, I don't know, I just prefer a cable. So I don't have one of the, you know, the cordless ones, but they sell those too. Let's see what's next. And I put these in here just for reference, but this is the Canon internal intervalometer setting. So here's the back screen. So here you have to turn the interval timer on, and then so you enable it, and then it has the interval is 34 seconds, because the longest you can shoot is 30 seconds, but then you need the 4 seconds in between for the camera to figure itself out and shoot again. If you make it 32 seconds, it only ever shoots once. I don't know why. And then let's see, the interval, yeah, is 34 seconds. So these are how you would set it on a Canon. I just don't use the internal one anymore. So to process these, I have a really good example I can show you guys. I do it in Photoshop, Photoshop layers. It's really easy. You can mask out whatever you don't want. It's just great. You can also use Star Stacks or some program like that, but I don't find them to be nearly as easy. And if you have Photoshop, it's pretty great. And I use the Nick tools a lot to well, you don't have to denoise star trails, but to denoise the static stars, and to change the vibrance and various things. So that's that. And I do have one more little presentation, and then I have a Photoshop demo. So I don't know where we are. Oh, we have tons of time. Does anybody have any questions about the star trail stuff?
So, Kathy, I guess just, I know you don't shoot just bulb on one image, but when you did do that, did you ever have a problem with like a sensor getting hot?
No.
That seems to, okay.
I had actually pretty well-known photographer tell me about that. So I did a bunch of reading, and I'm not sure it's a thing, but I know when we were out at the Patriarch, my friend Alex shot a 34-minute exposure on his Sony, and it was just fine. And I've done 15-minute ones, but I much prefer the 4-minute intervals just because I shoot with other people and it's just so easy to edit stuff out that I just don't bother. But I don't think that's a problem with a modern camera.
Kathy,
Yeah.
you mean, I don't know what I'm talking about, so maybe you can help me. I, I had heard that if you shoot longer than 30 seconds, that it creates quite a bit of noise. So is there I mean, do you find a disadvantage to shooting 4 minutes?
No, not at all. And if you have a relatively new digital camera, you're not going to have a problem. You're just not.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be like maybe 15 years ago with the early DSLRs, it was especially the Nikon ones, it was a really big problem, but that's just not a problem.
So,
If it's a high ISO, sure, but ISO 400 is nothing. ISO 100, I haven't had a problem at all. They're not grainy at all. They're no.
Thanks.
yeah, so yeah, you're shooting, I think the key is there at a lower ISO. So at 400, right? For 4
Yeah.
minutes instead of like
Yeah.
3200 for 4 minutes where you probably would pick up some noise.
Yeah, but that's just way too high an ISO to do
Yeah.
a 4-minute exposure wide open. So
I found that Topaz, the AI noise reduction Topaz filter works really, really well to reduce noise in a 30-second, like 6400 ISO,
yeah,
if you're shooting less than 30 seconds. So you can get rid of it using a filter.
yeah, you can. And I use the Nick tools for that. They work too. And I don't know if, yeah, there was another one I used to use, like Photo Ninja or something, but they've gotten so good. That's why I don't do any of the in-camera. Although I think Lauren was saying last time that I did this talk that the Sony has built-in stuff that's good, but like for Canon and Nikon, I would just turn the in-camera stuff off.
The Sony used to have denoise that was so good that it would remove the stars, but they updated that now.
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh, it's noise. No, it's a star. Don't be stupid. Let's see here. So this is a little teeny tiny talk because I've been out at least twice and there was an aurora and it just looked like there was some town there that shouldn't be there and I didn't even know what it was. So I just want everybody to be aware that you can see the aurora here. Probably most of you know that, but I just like to do this. So this was the first time I saw the aurora in Jackson. I was at the Chapel of the Transfiguration with a group of combat wounded veterans. And I kept thinking to myself, what is that glow? There's no town there. And the guy I was teaching with, he must have read my mind in the dark. And he said, there's nothing there. That has to be the lights. So I turned my camera and I took a shot. And sure enough, it was all pink and green and pretty. And this is the exact exposure I would use for static stars. I think it was like ISO 3200 for 25 seconds or whatever. And this is another time at the John Moulton Barn. It was a fun night. You could turn one way, shoot the Milky Way, turn the other way, shoot this to the aurora, turn the other way. So now before we go out, we actually look. I have an app on my phone, spaceweatherlive.com. It's free. The two things you want to look at before you go out and shoot in the dark is the KP index. So for us to see the aurora, the KP index needs to be usually 5 or higher. And the interplanetary magnetic field needs to be south. So on my phone, I get this little KP index scale. So I would want it's 0 in this. I should have picked a better one that said 5 or 6 or something. There's a bunch of other stuff, but really these are the only two things that matter. Here it's north. You want this to be south. not north. And that's when we really start looking and paying attention, is when those two things are met when we go out to shoot. So it's just something to really keep in mind. And I've gotten really diligent at looking every time I go out to shoot, because it's fun to see it. And again, the camera settings are just like static star settings, except if there's a moon, and you can actually see the aurora when there is a moon. Sometimes it's easier to see it when there's a little bit more light. Then I would go down a little bit on the ISO, because the sky's pretty bright. And this shot is not from here, but this is almost over to the right, almost a full moon with just a little bit of cloud over it. And I think this was ISO 800 for 15 seconds, but it turned out pretty cool. So that's my little take on the aurora, just so that everybody knows that you can see it here, because I didn't know that until I did.
Kathy, when you see a picture like the one that you're showing there, do you see that particular picture, or do you have to take a photo in order to see the aurora?
You can see it, it's just not as bright, like it's not as colorful. Like if I go back here, let me go back to this one. This one, it just looked like it wasn't colorful at all. It just literally looked like there was a town there that shouldn't be there. That's the only way I can describe it. It was just a white light. And then I took the exposure, and then I saw all the colors. The Alaska one, it was a little bit green, but not as green as because the exposure the longer exposure gathers more light, so you get more color. And this one actually did look pink. It looked a lot like that. So it just sort of depends. But if there's a light to the north and you don't know what it is, take a picture of it, and then you'll know.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm
Kathy,
just saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a question about, I guess, for the aurora, do you still focus on infinity or on
Yes,
something else?
everything is the same as static stars. Yeah, so you still want your infinity focus. All that is exactly the same. Because you might want to have it's exactly the same. Yeah. So anyway, so I have here, I have to work on it in the other screen, because you can't see the screen. Can you see these?
Yes.
So this was
Yes.
a few years ago. Judy and I decided we would go to the Taggart parking lot in the middle of the winter. We figured no one would be there. Boy, were we surprised. We figured no one would be there, and we would set up, and we would shoot star trails, and we would sit in the car and stay warm because there was a huge snowbank. So we climbed up on the snowbank. We got all set up, and it was like the whole world came to the parking lot while we were shooting star trails. So I shot these intervals. Anyway, so the way I would process these, so every one of these is the 4-minute ISO 400. This white balance is daylight. It's very amber colored. So I'm in Bridge, which is part of Photoshop. You could probably do this in Lightroom, but I don't use Lightroom. Those of you who know me know that. So what I would do is I would grab all of these intervals, right? And then up here, there's a open in Photoshop layers, load files into Photoshop layers. Do you see it? So you just click on that and you let it do its thing. It should do its thing. Why is it not doing its thing? Oh, it is. It's thinking about it. Come on. Here it is. So it's going to sit here and it's going to load these, and I'll wait till it's done, and then I'll show you how to process them. It's really super easy.
CJ, if you could make your Photoshop screen a little bigger, that might help.
Absolutely. Just let it finish real quick, because it's spinning. I've got the spinny. Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Let me get rid of this. Okay. So basically now I have all these layers. You can see them here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the layers. And then right here is the blending mode. See where it says normal? So you choose blending mode is lighten. And then you have star trails. So now, as you can see, the whole world was in the parking lot with us. We have lights here. It turns out, we found out the next day it was a search and rescue. They were pulling somebody out who died. And this light across here are the skiers coming out from after they airlifted the guy out. And, you know, this is a car. All these things happened in my intervals. So like if I go in here and I say, I marked all the ones that have lights. So let's see, if we click, that's a pretty boring one. We won't start with that one. So here, if I click, oh, let's see. I thought I had the method to my madness down. Hold on. Let's find one that really matters. Okay, so see this one, when I click this layer on and off, see how that takes away that much of the light? So if I go on this layer and I add down here at the bottom, if I just add a layer mask, then all I have to do is take a paintbrush and with the black paintbrush, let me make it bigger. And all I have to do is go in here and paint on it, and it takes that part of it away. So now if I find, let's see, where's another one that has lights? That's really weird. I labeled them all and it's not the best laid plans. Okay, let's see. Let me look in here real quick. So let's see. 7, 8 is one of them. We did 7, 8 and 7, 2. Okay, so if I go in here to 7, 2. Okay, so that's the skiers. You see that? I like the skiers. So I left the skiers in. But if I were to put a layer mask on there, oh, where did it go? It's this one. So if I put a layer mask on here and then I paint it, I could get rid of the skiers, right? There's most of the skiers. And so you just work your way through. This one is just a little bit of light right there. And I made that go away. And then this one. So when I click these on and off, it's also taking away the little bit in the star trail. But since I'm not drawing on that with the thing, I don't really care. I just want to get rid of all the lights that are down here. So let's see, what else is there? There's a little bit of that one. But basically, you just work your way through. I just don't understand where the rest of the red bit went. Let me look in here. Back in the images real quick. Yeah, so 7, 2, 7, 3. So if I did 7, 2, let's try 7, 3. Yeah, there's a little bit of red on this one. So if I go and make a layer mask and then I paint, eventually you get rid of all the little bits of stuff. There's a little bit of red that goes away with that one. And you just keep painting away the stuff that you don't want until you get the image that you do. I just don't understand where all the rest of the stuff went. I had it all marked. Let's see, 7, 8. So let's go to 7, 8. Did I do that? Oh, here's a bunch of it. See? So if I click that on and off, so maybe I want to go back in here and paint on this and get rid of some more of that because I don't like that. And then let's see. Where's the rest of the red? Let's look in here. So this is how you do it though. You just basically work your way through and paint out the stuff you don't want. This is 7, 8. I did 7, 8. And 7, 2 and 7, 3. And
Kathy,
7,
your brush
yeah.
opacity is only 48%. That may be part
Oh,
of it.
is that what it is? God, you know, I use this for so much. Thank you. That's probably why it's not making it go away. Okay, so let's go back to these and paint out. That gets rid of the rest of the skiers. Gets rid of the rest of that. So this is basically how you get rid of your friends who are misbehaving when you're out shooting. That's how, there it is. Thank you, whoever helped me with that. Anyway, so yeah, that's how you, and then if I wanted to get rid of this globby thing over here, I didn't mark those images, but if you look in here, it's this one, and this one. So 77, 78, and 79. So if I go into 79, 77, and I go, oops, whoops, I didn't make a layer mask. Make a layer mask. Gotta have a little discipline, Kathy. Make a layer mask, paint on it with black. And then I want to 7 this one, paint on it with black. And 79, make a layer mask. And if you oh God, Kathy, undo. If you overdo it, you can just paint on it with white and it'll take it away. But yeah, so this is how you do it. And then when you're done, you just flatten it out and away you go. I think when I processed this, I left the skiers in because I thought they were cool. And I left this blobby thing in because I kind of liked it, but I don't know what that light was from. But, and then you just flatten it out and you have your image. So pretty easy. Anyway, so if anybody has any questions about that. So it's loaded in Photoshop layers, light and blending mode. And then you just make a layer mask and paint on what you don't want.
Kathy,
Yeah,
it's a dumb question, but
no, it's not.
how do you know which star is the North Star?
It's what everything revolves around. But the North Star, if you're out there, if you find the Big Dipper, it's always just the star up off the top of the non-handle corner of the Big Dipper. Or you can use one of those apps like David had and just hold it up to the sky. Mostly I just use a compass. I find north and then I see the Big Dipper and then I look at the star that's off the top corner of the Big Dipper. But in this shot, the North Star is what everything's revolving around, right? Because as the planet revolves, the axis is that we can see is the north. So everything's going to spin around the north. And the reason that it's a little oval instead of round is because of the distortion of my 14mm lens, because it's kind of one of those bulby lenses. So around near the edges, you get a little warpiness.
And I guess just to elaborate on Gigi's question, does everybody know how to find the Big Dipper?
It's
Or
the only one I can find.
Well, if you
looking for
find
the
it,
North Star.
yeah. I tell you what, we'll try to post something that just shows you how to find the North Star. Because if you can find the Big Dipper, the two on the edge of the tail point towards the North Star. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll
but
try to.
Again, you can always put one of those apps on your phone and just hold it up.
Yeah.
That's, I just don't. And I'm not super, like, when I'm shooting star trails, like, I know I'm shooting north and it may or may not be, the North Star may or may not be in my shot. And sometimes it's okay if it's not there. I don't know, I'm not, but if you're really particular, you can work it out with one of those apps and then aim your camera right at it.
We'll try to post something about that on either in the Snapchat or just on the Facebook page. So
I have another question. Can I ask Kathy? Kathy, have you ever taken pictures of star trails from the dam?
I have not, but I've done it from the beach at the Chapel of the Sacred Heart. You could do it from the dam, although you could.
we got a question from Terry. Goes, do you do lens correction before stacking?
I don't, but I guess you could. Obviously, if I did, it probably wouldn't be so oval. but mostly these days I have a Rokinon 20mm f1.8 that I use almost always now for my night stuff with a full frame camera. I just love it. It's fast. It's not bulbous, so you don't get as much distortion. It's a really nice lens. And the focus is easy. You just turn it to infinity.
And I got a question about posting it on the website. We'll try to do that also. Any other questions for Kathy real quick?
I don't really have a question, just more of a comment for everybody. I don't know if you remember, CJ, that I had a knockoff envelometer and it was very hard to figure out. So I definitely recommend not skipping out and getting a decent one.
Oh, and I have to say, I bought this Canon BC whatever one. It's like $110, like, I don't know, 20 years ago, just because I needed a remote, a cable release. And it's awesome. The battery lasts literally forever. It's flawless. I mean, you know, it costs a little bit more, but like Adam said, you know, you kind of, with some of them, you kind of get what you pay for. So I love, and actually we were shooting one night at the Oxbow and my fancy Canon intervalometer went for a swim because the cable was long and I didn't realize how close I was to the water, and it still worked. So I dried it out and it totally still works. So yeah, I do remember that, Adam.
Do you know of other brands that are good?
I have a Shoot Canon knockoff one that I bought on Amazon that's pretty much identical, although I don't think it takes a little 20-25 batteries. I don't think it lasts as long as, even though the Canon one takes the same battery, but it's pretty decent. I know Judy has one that's cordless that she seems to like, although if you have a cordless one and you go in your car to warm up, you know, it needs to be close to the other part, otherwise it won't continue to shoot.
Yeah.
Not that we've done that before. And now, since mine went for a swim, I have double stick Velcro, so I stick it to my tripod so it doesn't dangle.
So, Dell's the one that let people know that Cam Rangers also work. So,
Cam what?
Cam Rangers.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
That's
they're
pretty good.
another type of remote that also do some other things. So yeah. And Rick wants to know, have you ever used a star tracker?
I have not. I've been out with someone who's used one and it was the bane of her existence. But I know a lot of people do. I just, you know, it's just not my thing. So no. Have you? Whoever asked that.
Rick asked that question. I actually have one, but I actually used it when we had the eclipse here to try to keep the sun in the center, which was, when you're shooting with a very long lens, that's I think probably the answer, Rick, is if you want to not have star trails for very, very long exposures, then a star tracker is probably a useful thing. But I agree with CJ. I don't find them really useful for just night sky photography, but if you're shooting longer lenses, then they come into play at that point.
I think there are people that do lots of little short exposures and then stack them with their tracker, but I just.
And one of the issues you have with the tracker is now your stars are still, but your horizon's rotating.
Right. And your foreground object is going to get messed up.
Right.
Too. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if Barney is still on, but he can add some maybe comments on that. let's see. I kind of want to, any other questions for CJ real quick?
And I was actually thinking, like last time I did this, I had a little meetup. Well, I think 3 people showed up, but you know, maybe for sure the August thing, I'm going to be up on Signal Mountain, and I'll make sure to announce the night I'm going to go up, and then the night of the thing again, because it's super fun to shoot up there, but Jackson is really bright. But we could all get together at some point and shoot, which is super fun.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let us know if you want. We'll try to post it on a couple of things and let's see if people can join you.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's good. Thank you very much for doing that. My
Yeah.
bad for getting distracted. And one other quick question I'd like to ask everybody. For the people who had trouble getting on, were you trying to do it from looking at the website? As I mentioned earlier, we now are putting the information to log on from the website. So
Yes.
were you within Zoom, or were you just trying to click on the
Follow the instructions.
Yeah, I did the same thing from the website. When I went back and found my email, it worked, but it didn't work from the website.
Okay.
Same
We're gonna have to
thing.
look in
Louis
there
was
'cause-
trying from his iPad and it never worked, David. But on my iMac it worked, but we just went to Zoom. We didn't hit the link.
Okay.
I didn't think there was a link. I had to put in the password and the passcode and the meeting ID.
All right. Well, yeah, if you did have trouble, I mean, shoot us a message about were you going from Zoom and putting the information in there, or were you trying to click from the club link? Because yeah, we want to debug that, because I got quite a few messages from people that were having trouble. So cool. Well, CJ, thank you very much. That was great. Any other questions for her?
Thank you very much. Yeah, David, what was wrong with the other way of getting them into the meetings that you guys decided to do what you did?
Well, Rick, I'm not sure I have a really good answer at this point. I'm just taking a guess from what a few people were saying when they were trying to get in, and what worked and what didn't. But I don't think we have enough data to say what was working and what wasn't. But we were trying to make it where you could either go to the event page, or look at, you would have multiple ways of getting here, because every time we have a meeting, we have a few people who go, where's the information? So we're trying to put the information in as many places.
Okay.
But I don't know if we had some problem with it picking it up from the website, which was the new method. Lauren, did you were one of the ones having trouble getting in?
I learned a lot. First thing I learned tonight, what my problem was, I just had to reboot my computer, because apparently when you have multiple Zoom presentations coming up, it will default to what's under your name. And I set up a bunch of test things when we were checking this thing out last month. And that's what was happening to me. Once I rebooted, it was fine. But the reasons why is to try to get some consistency so people can log in any way they choose. The easiest thing in the future, and we'll find out, because at the peer mentor meeting next week, we have automated the entire process. We did the entire setup process manually, but we tested each of the individual pieces and they all worked fine. Now, we'll find out next week. If you go to the TPC website, you log in. That's the first thing. You have to log in with your normal email address and your TPC password. Then go to the events, and when you find the event, you'll be able to mark it, put it on your calendar, but there's a direct link that'll take you straight to the Zoom site. You don't need the ID, you don't need the passcode, and all of these things that are so confusing and usually require you to cut and paste multiple times to get into the things. It should work fine. There's a huge advantage for the club because it links all this stuff together automatically. So it saves us a lot of time in the setup. And it also sets up so the member notification occurs automatically. So as a new event is created, you'll get an email that tells you how to get directly to that event and log in. So I'm hoping everything is going to work. I know the pieces work. I know tonight there were some issues, but this one was set up manually. Next week, is Randy still on? Next week, we'll find out if it works with the peer mentors because this will be the first time we've actually automated all the individual pieces. But I think it will make things easier. We will still provide the meeting name and the passcode. And if you want to get in the way you have in the past, you can always use that. It will be on there. The reason you have to log in first is that this has, Aaron has created a wonderful security thing that nobody can see that information unless you're a TPC member. If you're a member, then it shows up. If you're not a member, you see the event, but you cannot get in, log in directly. No. Any questions at all?
Yeah, I'm getting a couple of chats. So I want to ask two people a question. So Ben, you said you couldn't get in through the Zoom app with the meeting ID?
The Zoom app wouldn't let me. It would give me the meeting, but it wouldn't take the password.
That happened to me too, Ben.
Yeah.
Same problem I had. Did you by any chance have any other Zoom meetings set up and scheduled?
No.
No.
That seemed to be what my problem was. I don't know.
I couldn't get in through Safari, but I got in through, my wife got me in through Chrome.
Okay. Huh. And it's Sue Laurie. You said you logged in and went to the event page. So you logged into TPC, but couldn't access the meeting.
Right.
So that's two very different things. I wonder if we were just having too many people trying to log on.
Sue, did you see the passcode in the screen, the direct link to this meeting?
Yes, I did.
But it didn't work.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, hey, Lauren, this is
It would,
Barney.
it would not accept, yeah, and it would ask for the passcode and it would not accept it.
No. I had that same problem with two different browsers, and I had it, you know, I assumed the problem was because I had other meetings set up at the same time, but yeah, Barney?
No, I was just going to say I tried it both ways, but logging through the TPC site and it wouldn't take the passcode. I tried that a couple of different times and then logged off of that and logged into my Zoom account and then put in the meeting code, which it accepted, but it wouldn't take the password. Now, to mirror what you said, Lauren, I had just come off another Zoom meeting. So I don't know whether there was some problem with Zoom, but I did not reboot
What it was doing for me, I would type in the proper Zoom meeting number, and then, you know, it came up, so it show the passcode. I put in the passcode. It was defaulting back to another Zoom meeting, and that's why the passcode wouldn't work.
I'll bet that's what was happening to me too.
Okay.
But anyway, David sent me the link directly by email, and I clicked that, and it just, I was in the meeting. So
perfect. That's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks for all your effort in getting this going. We'll get the bugs worked out. It'll be real.
Elizabeth is trying to say something. But you're muted.
Ma'am, do you want me to sign?
Yeah. Sorry.
Since we are not giving out nuclear codes, do we need a password to get into TPC? And then we need the password for the Zoom. And then can we make it just so if you get into TPC because you have a membership, then you can just go to the Zoom?
That's how it is, Lisa. Yeah, that's how it was set up. That's what we're trying to make it easy. Most people can remember their password to get into the TPC account.
Right.
Zoom ones are impossible because they're all these, you know, numbers and letters and stuff.
Well,
so that's how it is now. You
can make the Zoom one though, whatever you want it to be. You don't have to use the generated one. And I really do appreciate that you let other people besides members attend this. So.
Yeah.
Great presentation, Kathy.
Thanks.
Kathy, I
Anything
like
else?
your informal attitude of.
You
let's
like
just
what?
do it. I love your informal attitude. Let's do it. We don't have to have these precise numbers and these
Oh,
numbers.
well, you know, I'm not like one of those really, I love the night sky, but you know, like I'm never going to get a telescope and like, I don't know. I have friends that do all that really intense Andromeda photography and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just like scenery with pretty stars.
Well,
So
you capture it. So thank you very much.
I think the thing that's cool is since you can't even look through your camera, like it's just, for me, it's made it a joy because you can't like overthink it and be so analytical. And, you know, I don't know. I just really like it a lot. So,
Yes, I definitely liked your presentation and your attitude. Thank
well,
you.
come out and shoot with us when we do a shoot.
Okay. Next time I get my batteries all nice and warm.
Cool. Anything else from anyone?
David, this
Yes.
is Lee, Kathy's sister in Phoenix. We had a Zoom meeting earlier this week and had exactly the same problem. So it might just be a technical at Zoom thing happening this week, wherein you could enter the meeting ID and then a password, but you couldn't get through on a link. So it might just be something that's going on with them right now, or people may need to also update to the latest Zoom.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah, it's interesting because I have to say from some of the messages I was dealing with, they're not all the same issue. I mean, even I think Ben and Lauren both said they tried different browsers and different methods to get in. So
yeah, it might be a temporary kind of technical glitch.
Yeah. I mean, and so many people are using, I mean, it might just be a bandwidth thing, people hitting at the same time. And I mean, Zoom is extremely popular right now. So I don't know. Difficult to put our finger on, but we'll discuss it offline with everybody involved and see if we'll know more on next Wednesday on the Pyramid program. So we had the same problems again. So, but yeah, and I'll try to edit around CJ's. I'll get the front, the end of the presentation at the front. So hopefully it'll look a little better when we put it online. So sorry for missing the record button, but I was getting a lot of messages there for a bit. So anything else from anyone? This is a great meeting. We had a lot of people on, I think over 35 at one point.
Wow.
Good.
Yeah. Wonderful job, Kathy. Oh, and by the way, I don't know, I put it up earlier, but y'all can find her at Daydream Images on the website. She also does printing for people. So she did a beautiful night shot for me, or she did a beautiful job of a night shot I took. I don't know if my night shot was so good, but
it was great. That's not true. It was great.
So
yeah, my website is daydream.com. Easy to remember.
Cool.
And she did a great thing for me a couple years ago for the Who Done It, and
yeah.
Remember that? And you did that on the canvas, and it sold immediately. So thank you.
Those are fun. I do a lot of those. Not this year. I haven't had any this year. People need to get their canvas on.
Okay, Ben, you're being a little cruel there, asking if Zoom is based in Texas.
Probably wouldn't be working at all if that were the case.
Yeah. But anyhow, we will get started on that, since I have a lot of friends and relatives in Texas right now who've been sitting in the cold, including an 89-year-old uncle who was offline for almost 3 days. So
I know they said it's down to 49 or something, or 45, and I went, that's
Well,
not
less than that.
you know, they were actually colder than we were here for a few days. Yeah, I mean, they got down into single digits, which they're not well prepared for. So,
No, that's true.
but
Their homes
yeah,
got so cold that the pipes are bursting in
yeah,
their homes. So cold. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They've even had some the water plants freeze, so people are having to boil water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not a good thing. But anyhow. All right. Kathy, we meant to take your last message offline there.
I don't
You're
know
talking
what
about
it
your
is.
link to log into the website?
Yes.
Okay. I'll tell you what, send me an email privately on that. We'll look at that tomorrow. So,
Okay.
all right. Thanks a lot for everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. Great presentation.
Good night, guys.